do the honours. Good morning, everybody. Great to be back in Scotland. First reason I came was for the Glenrothes by-election, the local by-election, and as you will have noticed, at successive by-elections since July 2024, Reform UK Scotland has been performing better week after week after week. Lots of good seconds, and now we're beginning to win some of these by-elections, and we're fighting very hard in this one running up to next Thursday. One of the promises that I made as leader of Reform the morning after the general election is that I would professionalise the party. We had in London this weekend 100 of our vetted candidates for the Scottish Parliament elections who spent a whole day going through intensive media training, being asked questions, being cross-questioned, being really put through their paces, so that we could find out, which of our candidates had the best talent, which were the best at pushing our message, and we will, over the course of the next few weeks, announce what our list of candidates is going to be for the 7th of May. We feel very confident that the list of men and women we're going to put before the Scottish electorate will represent a very, very broad cross-section of working life in Scotland, people with real experience, not many professional politicians among them, I'm pleased to say, but we're very confident we're going to put forward a really great list of people. As you know, in the opinion polls, there's been some considerable shift, and I'm increasingly of the view that these elections on May the 7th will be literally a two-horse race here in Scotland between us and the SNP. And I believe that we will be seen as the main opposition because neither the Conservative Party nor Labour Party have been able to provide genuine, real coherence to much of the damage that the SNP have done to Scotland. And I think one of the reasons for that is there are quite big internal divisions that exist within those parties. We are very united in our vision. We understand what we think has gone wrong. We're also very optimistic, both at Scottish level and at UK level, that we can provide the people the answers, the solutions to perhaps give people that missing four-letter word that we're all struggling for at the moment, namely that of hope. My last visit here, I was able to introduce onto the stage a defector from the Conservative front bench in the House of Lords. And we don't have that many Lords in our party. And in a few minutes, we're going to have even fewer Lords in our party, because the first thing I want to do today is go through a formal signing ceremony, which Malcolm and I will now do. Okay, I'll sign that bit. And we'll just...
do this big one?
Yep. And with this, Lord Offord of Garville becomes Malcolm from Greenock. There we are.
Thank you for this one, please. Thank you for this one. Thank you, Steve.
Get on this way, please. Just round here for me. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Lovely.
Can you rotate it around just a tiny bit to us?
Yes, of course.
Perfect. Just this way, please, down here. You want to get this way as well?
Yep, certainly.
Just right in front of the stand, please. Okay. Just down here, please.
Yep. Everybody happy? Very.
Just let me here, please. Thank you.
You better keep that as a souvenir.
Yeah, I will.
And what Malcolm Offord has done is, I believe, a very brave and principled move. After all, the House of Lords is a club for life. Subsidised lunch, sleep on the benches all afternoon, stay there until you're 94, and he's given it all up to stand for reform in the Scottish elections, Scottish Parliament elections of 2026. A brave and principled move. And with that, I have today, my main task today, I have absolutely no hesitation as leader of Reform UK to announce that from this moment, plain Malcolm Offord is leader of Reform UK Scotland. I've appointed him leader, and he will lead this party into those elections on May the 7th. As the party builds and develops its branch network, in future, positions like this will be open to elections of the members. But we are a work in progress. Time is very short, and I'm entirely confident, firstly, that I've made the right decision, and secondly, that I will carry with me the overwhelming support of our 12,000 members in Scotland. We have an enormous amount to do over the course of the next few months. I think we could even surprise ourselves with just how many votes we managed to garner in these elections. A huge chunk of the Scottish electorate are looking for something different, and they're tired of the decline this country's seen under SNP government. So, Malcolm, you've got the job. Congratulations. And his job now is very easy. All he has to do is make a success of it, or else.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah. Very good. On you go.
Thank you, Nigel, for that. No pressure whatsoever, but delighted to be announced today as leader of Reform in Scotland. And as Nigel says, we have now got a race for the line. We've got 16 weeks, effectively, from now to the 7th of May. The momentum is with Reform, no question about it. And we are going to be campaigning from now on a very, very positive campaign with one clear message, one objective. We want to remove this rotten SNP government after 18 years of failure and incompetence. And this is now a two-horse race between Reform and the SNP. And why do I say that? I think since coming over here on the 6th of December, we've met a lot of you, obviously, in Falkirk, spending a lot of time with the members, spending a lot of time with our candidates. And as Nigel mentioned last week, we had over 90 folks in our candidate list who've all gone through a very, very tight process, assessment centre to come through. We've got extraordinary talent in this group of people. And what's really interesting is that these are real, authentic people who do real, authentic jobs. These are people who are teachers, there's medics, there's midwives, there's a procurator fiscal, there's people who run their own SMEs. They represent basically Scotland at its grassroots in every part of this country. And they represent a movement of ordinary, decent working Scots who are just fed up that Holyrood has not delivered for them. And we've just had the 25th anniversary of devolution. And ask yourself the question, in 25 years, have our standards in Scotland gone up or have they gone down? And how many areas can we genuinely go through and see where the Scots running our own parliament? This is not being done to us by the English. This is Holyrood, devolution, Scots administering Scots. Have we got a better outcome for our patients in the NHS? Have we got a better outcome for our young people in our schools? Have we got more cohesive and safer communities? And do we have an economy that works for everybody? And if the answer to these questions is no, well, isn't it time for a change? I mean, isn't the definition of madness to keep doing the same thing after 25 years? And basically, Holyrood for 25 years, well, it's been Labour to begin with, and then SNP, have been run effectively by a centre-left agenda. And that agenda is about spending. Spend, spend, spend. Holyrood, just like we saw in the budget the other day there, was basically a non-event. A gimmick here and there and a soundbite here and there, but nothing about how to grow. How do we grow our economy? How do we make our country wealthy? How do we make our country prosperous? So that is the message that Reform UK have. We have, as I say, we're more than 12,500 members now, and we have a really talented group of candidates. For me, as I take over this position now, the focus will be between now and the end of January to give a bit of a set-piece speech so we can actually set the direction of travel and the policy framework we're going to be working to. Then, of course, we'll have our manifesto, and we'll then place all our candidates into the various constituencies and lists. So we're well organised, we're well funded, and we're very well motivated. So it's a great pleasure to be here. I look forward to taking questions with Nigel. Thank you very much.
Malcolm, thank you. And I know with your professionalism, your dynamism, your experience of the real world, both in business and in politics too, that you are exactly the right man to lead this charge. We have an absolute mass of questions to get through. So let's get cracking. James Cook, BBC.
Thanks very much indeed. Good morning, gentlemen. Robert Jenrick has just been sacked by Kemi Badenoch because she said there was clear evidence he was plotting to defect. Was he in talks with you to defect to Reform?
I'm very surprised that this news is broken.
Are you, though?
Well, I never reveal private conversations with anybody, which is why, you know, when people like Malcolm came to me to talk and he was a front bencher, nothing ever leaked. So I'm going to say that I've had conversations with a number of very senior Conservatives over the course of the last week, over the course of the last month, and a lot of them realise that for all the talk that Kemi's doing better at PMQs, which is true, for all the talk of a supposed Kemi bounce, I think a lot of them realise that on May the 7th, or should I say May the 8th, the Conservative Party will cease to be a national party. They will all be obliterated in Scotland, in Wales, in the Red Wall councils, if they're not all cancelled. We'll find out later on today about that. So there's a lot of people seriously considering their future. As far as Mr Jenrick's concerned, of course I've talked to Robert Jenrick. Was I on the verge of signing a document with him? No. But have we had conversations? Yes.
So he was considering leaving the Conservatives and joining Reform UK?
I think virtually every Conservative is considering leaving the Conservatives, yes.
Including Mr Jenrick?
I think that's been in his mind, yes. I've little doubt it's been in his mind. But I mean, you know, have we signed and sealed a deal? No. And many of those that come and talk to me result in them not coming. But then I never betray confidences or say exactly who they are. But there are a lot of people in Mr Jenrick's position who don't see a viable future for the Conservative Party. I think May the 7th is going to be a very, very big day. And frankly, many who are beginning to see parallels with what happened with the Liberal Party almost exactly 100 years ago, when they went from being a natural party of government to being a very small provincial party and have stayed mostly there for the last 100 years. Thank you very much indeed. There we are, breaking news. It's all happening, isn't it? Lindsay Bewes from BBC Scotland.
Thanks very much. A question to you, Mr Farage. The Prime Minister is in Scotland today as well, saying that a switch to renewable energy will bring down the cost of electricity for every household. Do you believe this to be true? And can I also ask you for your view on renewables in general in Scotland and that industry creating jobs? What role do you think that renewables should play in Scotland's economy?
Let us be clear, the way we are doing renewables in this country at the moment is an economic act of self-harm of the most extraordinary level. We have been deindustrialising Scotland, deindustrialising England, Wales and Northern Ireland because we have the most expensive energy prices in the Western world. 4 times the price of industrial energy in America, double the price of industrial energy in France. And, you know, if you're Jim Ratcliffe running Grangemouth, actually, energy is your single biggest cost factor. Is it any wonder that he can't make it work? Yesterday, this deluded government locked in the AR7 round. They have locked it in at a strike price and with guarantees that not only is above current market rates, but guarantees this strike price to those companies for the next 20 years. The evidence is clear. The more we rely on renewables, the higher our domestic and our industrial energy prices become, and we've just locked in expensive energy for a further 20 years. It is an act of sheer stupidity. Does it create a few jobs in maintaining, engineers being taken out to maintain the wind farms? Yes, it does. But if you actually look at this, who are the beneficiaries? Who are the big financial beneficiaries of yesterday's wind auction? Frankly, it's one big German company. Who are the manufacturers of those blades? Predominantly Chinese companies. And it doesn't matter how many of these turbines you put in the North Sea, there are times when this will not work. And I refer you almost exactly to a year ago, when there was a large anticyclone sitting over the North Sea, and on some mornings at 8 o'clock, the United Kingdom was importing 25% of its electricity needs at exorbitant prices. So this is crazy. This is crazy. And actually, the more wind you have, the more solar you have, the more gas you need to back it up. And here in Scotland, as a result of conservative tax policies, a vote fast by the SNP on their energy policy and what Rachel Reeves and Starmer have done, we've basically effectively ceased to be a producer of gas. The whole thing is madness. Now look, I will say there are elements of renewables that can work. You can put solar panels on brand new build houses. They can be efficient. You can use a heat pump for a brand new build house, and it might be efficient. But for 90% of the housing stock, a heat pump will cost you more money and act inefficiently. So we can use renewables in a way as we move forward, but if anyone thinks they're the solution to powering a grid for nearly 70 million people, for supporting what little industry we have left, and frankly what we're also doing is we're closing ourselves off to the 21st century technologies. Data banks, crypto mining, these are all the big technologies of the future, and they use even more energy than the old heavy manufacturing ever did. It is disastrous. Starmer is deluded. Miliband seems to have adopted this as a new religion. But they're not on their own, of course, because it was the previous Conservative government that legislated for net zero to become law. And I think we are, on this issue with the people of Scotland and more broadly across the whole of the United Kingdom, I believe that we are the practical, sensible people who are pro-people having cheaper energy bills and reindustrialisation of our once great nation. You produce your own gas. And then you'll get the answer, but gas is controlled by world markets. No, it's not. The oil price is. Gas isn't. Gas has a massive domestic element. And I'd say this to you. Q3 growth in America was 4.3%. Q3 growth in this country is 0.3%. The single biggest difference between Britain and America over the course of the last 20 years is energy policy. America has had an economic boom by extracting gas in the Midwest on a vast scale at a cheap price, and America going from being a massive importer of energy to being an exporter. Energy is absolutely the key to jobs and our industrial future. I accept there are a few jobs in renewables, but those jobs are way fewer than those they've got rid of in traditional manufacturing, let alone the potential of the 21st century. Sorry, very long answer, but I feel strongly about that. Anthony Maguire, GB News.
Good morning. I've just had a question really about the candidates that you spoke of. Now, we don't obviously have their names yet. We'll find out more in the next few weeks. But Reform UK has previously come under fire for the experience of candidates that it's put forward. Now, you've said there that the experience of these candidates for this year's election have impressed you. I just wondered if you could kind of tell us a bit more about what that experience looks like and why you think that will translate into good politicians.
Well, I mean, a couple of points here. Number one, I think that too much of politics has been dominated by, frankly, by college kids. You know, kids that come out of college, work professionally in politics or media, and then become members of the Scottish Parliament, the Westminster Parliament, whatever it may be. I don't think there's enough of a breadth of people who, as Malcolm said earlier, have been nurses, teachers, doctors, entrepreneurs, business runners, whatever that may be. So we are very confident that we'll provide a widespread from across Scottish society of people that stand. And interestingly, they also come from a wide range of political backgrounds too. But many of them are coming from no political background whatsoever. They're getting involved in politics because they're really worried about the state the country's in and want to do something to help turn it around. Vetting is an issue. You know, we have to make sure our people are thoroughly vetted. There are no hidden nasties from us. We're taking that process with these candidates here in Scotland more seriously than we've ever taken it before. Doing all the DBS checks, background checks, you name it, we're doing all of that. That then leads to one potential weakness. And that potential weakness is, well, you've got to have somebody who's been in frontline politics that understands roughly how the process works. We have one existing member of the Scottish Parliament, been there for some years, understands, Graham, how the whole thing works. And we have a new leader of Reform UK Scotland who's been a front bench spokesman in the House of Lords. And I believe we have the mixture of political experience with these two guys, enthusiasm and real world knowledge from the rest of the candidates. And we will show you those whole lists. We'll be doing a big conference to launch formally our campaign. It'll be coming in the first week of March. Thank you very much indeed. Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Hello, thank you. Mr Farage, just to follow up on the issue of Robert Jenrick, Badenoch has just sacked him from her shadow cabinet, removed the whip and suspended his party membership with immediate effect. And she said, I was presented with clear, irrefutable evidence that he was plotting in secret to defect in a way designed to be as damaging as possible to his shadow cabinet colleagues and the wider Conservative Party. Mr Farage, can I ask you, were you planning to unveil him as a new star sign-in to Reform this afternoon in London, because you were due in London later today? And is he welcome to join Reform now if the Tories don't want him?
Well, it sounds to me like she's panicked. Because, as you know, I am doing a press conference in London this afternoon at about 4:30. Obviously, we had the Nadeem Zahawi defection just the other day. We had the offered defection a few weeks before that. There's been quite a long list of former Conservative MPs that have been joining us. There have been others that have tried to join that we've said, no, we don't think it'll work. So she's aware that there is that move. And so I suspect she's panicked. I suspect she's added up 2 and 2 and made 5. I can confirm, hand on heart, honestly, look you in the eye, I was not going to be unveiling Robert Jenrick at 4:30 this afternoon. As I said to your BBC colleague a moment ago, is he one of many that I've talked to about what the future might look like? Absolutely. But, you know, well, have I signed a deal with him? No.
Okay, you're in talks, but Mr Farage, can I ask you, I mean, he's just been suspended from the Conservative Party for plotting to defect. I assume he's plotting to defect to Reform.
Well, it could be the Lib Dems, I don't know, you know.
Do you think he's a Lib Dem?
No.
Can you confirm you've been in talks with him?
No, I confirmed that already a couple of times.
Would you welcome
I have
him?
been talking to lots of people. Do you know what? We will welcome anyone that comes to us from whatever party who is going to add to what we do. It doesn't just see us as perhaps a life raft to save a parliamentary career, but people who want to add to what we have to do, who share our values, who share our beliefs, But equally, you have to be honest about the sheer level of failures of 14 years of broken manifesto commitments. So do you know what? I'll give him a ring this afternoon.
I mean,
I'll give him a ring this afternoon.
he ran for leadership.
I might even buy him a pint, you never know.
He was in the shadow cabinet. He was in the shadow cabinet.
Yes.
He'd be a big signing for you, wouldn't he?
I mean, he was part of that Tory failure, but the one big tick against his name is that he did resign as immigration minister because of the failures of the government. So that would be a big tick in his direction. I will speak to him this afternoon and see what he wants to do.
Okay, thank you. Lord Offord, I did have a question for you. Sorry, events have rather...
He just signed his resignation. Call him Malcolm.
Lord Offord, I wanted to ask you about a key voter priority here in Scotland, which is the NHS.
Yeah.
You've previously said there needs to be a dialogue with the public about the acceptability of user charges for some services and the removal of free prescriptions for certain categories of medication. Do you still think that's right for Scotland? And Mr Farage, do you think the NHS should be funded through taxpayer money in England? Thank you very much.
So reform is very clear. There'll be no plans to be charging for the NHS in Scotland. That paper you're referring to was a paper written by a group of medics who were examining other systems around Europe, in particular looking at Sweden and Germany, who spend the same amount of money as Scotland does and get better outcomes. So it's a sensible thing to say, how do they get better outcomes and what are some of the differences? One of the differences is in Sweden you pay £10 for a GP charge. That is not reform policy. What is clear from the polling is that 93% of Scots say that the NHS needs to be reformed. We're spending $20 billion on it. That's gone up 6% per annum over the last 25 years. So there's no shortage of money, but what there's a shortage of is patient outcomes, and that's what we're going to get focused on in our manifesto.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no question about how we fund the NHS, that it comes out of general taxation. And there's no question that, the desire for an NHS that is free at the point of delivery is written into part of who we are, and it's been there for basically best part of 80 years. The question is, where does the money get spent? How is it that we go from 8% of GDP to nearly 12% of GDP, and there are fewer hospital beds? Now, I will say this. There is a Reform member and activist who is chairman of an NHS trust, one that has completely turned things around, so much so, it was actually mentioned and praised in Prime Minister's questions yesterday. The whole 38 minutes wasn't just abusing me. I mean, most of it was, obviously. But so look that up. And so I've got a guy very much in my inner team who has managed to turn round an NH Trust in a spectacular way. And I'm talking to him about how we can use the methods that he's used in that home county to perhaps get better bang for buck, better delivery across the nation. As far as I'm concerned, all options are on the table. We must be completely open-minded about structures to see how we get better delivery. I don't want to change the basic principle, but I also suspect there's a lot we can learn from our European neighbours who are getting much better outcome for every pound they spend. Let's go on to Ewan Petrie from STV.
Thank you, Mr Farage. Just over 3 months ago, your deputy, Richard Tice, told us that your leader in Scotland would be democratically elected by its members. So what's changed since then? Were you waiting for a defection? Was the promise of the leadership part of a deal to get Malcolm Offord to come over?
No, I didn't promise him that, no.
What's changed since then?
Time. We're running out of time. We're running out of time. We're a new party. We're a new party. We're busy forming branches. We're busy putting together rule books. We're busy putting structure in place. I promised on that night in Clacton I would democratise and professionalise the party. I have professionalised the party to a very, very large degree. I've also democratised much of it. At the time, it was a limited company, and I owned 2/3 of the shares, which made decision-making very straightforward. But, I've got rid of that. I've opened the party up to the members. I've got an elected board. We're a work in progress. We're still a very, very new party. And we will have elected leaders in Scotland. And we will have full, mature constituency associations choosing candidates for the Scottish Parliament, for the Westminster Parliament. All of that will come. I haven't got time to do it right now. Right now, I have to move. These elections are only literally a few weeks away. All that will come in time, absolutely, no question. We will turn it into a fully democratised party. But I promise you, you know, our members here in Scotland will fully support and understand what I've done, given that they understand too that we're a work in progress. Okay, Peter Smith, ITV.
Mr Farage, with that breaking news of the defection, we saw the mobile phone being shown to you and you reacting to the news.
What defection?
In surprise. Sorry, I'll rephrase that. Yeah, the
Well, you
sacking.
better do. Unless you know something I don't.
Well,
you know, it's quite possible.
Well, Kemi Badenoch has been really clear. The detail behind this sacking is she says there was a secret plot, and that's why Robert Jenrick has been
They
sacked.
love a secret plot in Westminster, don't they?
Well, she's made the allegation.
I know. And she's flapped, and she's panicked, and she clearly thought at 4:30 this afternoon Robert Jenrick was going to join Reform
Is there a
UK.
plot, Mr Farage?
He was not going to join. There was no plot for him to join at 4:30 this afternoon. There's no plot. There are many, many private conversations happening between myself, senior Conservative figures at all levels around this country, including the House of Commons, including the House of Lords, including what's left of them in English county councils. There aren't many of them. And there is an open debate about this, because people can see that the writing is on the wall.
Mr Farage, you've chosen your words very carefully there, saying there wasn't a plot for him to be unveiled this afternoon.
There's no plot.
Have there been talks?
There's no plot.
You say you have had talks with Robert Jenrick.
I've had talks with lots of people.
In the detail of those talks, have you discussed him defecting to Reform?
I've discussed him giving us a massive donation. I've discussed running the London Marathon with him. I've discussed whether he thinks it's right that he would join Reform. Would it make sense for him? Wouldn't it? Of course, I've discussed those things with him and many other people.
So there have been talks. You don't dispute that Robert Jenrick has been in talks with you about potentially defecting?
I don't dispute. I've been in talks with lots of people about them joining. What I'm telling you, what I'm telling you, and what I'm telling Kemi, if she's watching, is that, you know, that there's no deal being signed. Conversations being had. Ideas being kicked around the room. Nothing signed.
Is the door open to Robert Jenrick if he wants to?
Well, as I've said already, I'm going to give him a ring this afternoon. I might buy him a drink and see what he wants to do. As I say, he did resign from the last government on a point of principle, on immigration, and frankly, the Boris wave was one of the biggest breaches of electoral trust we've ever seen in this country, given the 80-seat majority that he got in 2019, which I played some part actually in helping him achieve. And to promise lower numbers and to deliver record numbers, in many cases of people whose indefinite leave to remain comes up in the next 2 years and who will prove to be a huge financial burden on taxpayers for decades to come. The fact that Jenrick resigned over that was the right thing to do. So wait and see.
And a question for the leader formerly known as Lord Offord. You've been, sure. You've been handpicked for. Yeah. Okay. So the mic's been taken away from Lord Offord. But before it is taken away, you were handpicked to be a Lord in the House of Lords. You have been handpicked to be leader of Reform. The only time you stood for election in Scotland, I think you came fifth. Are you worried about actually facing the Scottish voters?
That's what I'm looking forward to doing, and they will have their vote on the 7th of May.
And they will have their say. Andrew Misra from Channel 4.
Hi, Mr Farage. Just picking up on the news about Mr Jenrick. Are you picking
I don't know how many more permutations of this we've got.
Well,
you know, but
I
mean, I'll keep trying for you, you know.
Are you picking up any resistance within Reform to all these Tories coming over from one of the so-called establishment parties that you say need to be replaced?
2 points on that. The worries I get from within Reform are, one, will they bring Tory infighting with them? Because we had 4.5 years of psychodrama with that last Conservative government, where they fought each other in public, they fought each other in private, and so if people want to bring that with them, they're not wanted by our membership, they're not wanted by our board, and they're not wanted by me, and that's the first thing I would say. And secondly, you know, we will not be Tory Party 2.0, because we have a completely different set of policies. And people that come have to say they admit that net zero, mass migration, North Sea taxes, and many other things were a terrible mistake. They have to make real mea culpas. And anyway, I'll cheer you all up next week because I'll have a Labour defection next week, and that'll change the script, won't it? Go on.
Do reforms immigration crackdowns hurt Scotland?
Is that for me?
Well, it may as well be.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
You answer it.
Well, I think what we're seeing in Scotland is that this is now the three issues that are of most importance in local communities, obviously the health service, the economy and immigration. And of course the particular policies put in place around Glasgow City Council and put through the SNP have exacerbated that. That's now why it's a real issue that previously was not really an issue in Scotland for many, many years. We have a very proud tradition of welcoming strangers to Scotland and integrating in Scotland. But in the last 5 years, there's been a big change in that approach, which is why it's now on the radar in this election.
Yeah, I mean, outside the European Union, we are now free. We are free as a country to say that we should, as much as is possible, and without sacrificing quality, put the interests of British workers ahead that of workers of other nationalities. And I can't understand why that's controversial. But apparently, in some elements of the press, in criticisms of other parties, me saying that is controversial. I think putting the interests of British workers first is the right thing to do. I think will be supported by a vast majority of voters here in Scotland and across the wider country. Okay, Alan Jenkins, 5 News.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Away from the circus of defections, how relatable do you think your Scottish leader, who's a multi-millionaire, is to ordinary Scots?
You dreadful man, you've been successul. How awful.
What a crime.
Why don't we get more failures like Rachel Reeves running the country? I mean, here we are with our economy tanking nationally, tanking in Scotland, tanking in Wales, being led by people who couldn't run a blooming whelk stall. And surely what we want are people who have been successful. It's not, look, Malcolm is not somebody born with vast levels of privilege or anything like that. He's done what he's done because he's got a good brain. He's worked damned hard. And you know what? Rather than being looked down upon, I'd like young Scots to say, do you know what? If he can do it, I can blooming well do it. And these are some of the attitudinal changes that are needed right across the United Kingdom. And there are elements of America we can like, elements of America we perhaps don't like. But one thing about America, when they see people who have been successful, they make them into heroes. And here, we try and make them into villains. I believe Malcolm can go and talk in any bar, any public gathering, and speak to people one-on-one, regardless of their background, their class, their nationality, their religion. And if I didn't believe those things, I wouldn't have him as the leader.
You should come campaigning with me. Come and see for yourself.
Absolutely. John Boothman, The Times.
Malcolm, you've spoken on Twitter actually about how there was no policies in the Scottish budget to encourage growth.
Yeah.
What taxes would you cut, and would you cut welfare programmes like the child payment?
So, we've done, as I said, we've done 25 years of the same experiment. 25 years. If we've got a problem, what we do is spend money. We throw money at the problem. When the Holyrood Parliament started, our total state spending was 43% of GDP. It's now 55% of GDP. Ask yourself the question, are our public services better or not? We need to grow the economy. There's many levers to pull. Tax is only one of a number of levers that needs to be pulled. And we'll put that package together to show you that basically we can grow our economy, and a growing economy is the benefit of everybody.
So what taxes would you cut?
I'm going to give you the general roadmap here, which is we're going to look at the whole tax and spend. We'll look at welfare. We're going to make sure that we've got the right balance between work and welfare. We'll look at all of that.
Candidates coming at the conference, first week of March, policies shortly thereafter. It will happen, all in good time, I promise you. David Walker, Scottish Daily Express.
Hi both. A question to both of you. Concerns have been raised that reform softened Scottish independence and union. Ms Lawford, you said a few weeks ago that you wouldn't rule out referendum in 10 years' time if SP win a majority. Would you both rule out a referendum now, even if they do win a majority? And what would you say to people who don't believe that reform are strong, protect the union?
Look, you know, a referendum on separation is not on the cards. It's not going to be granted by Westminster. It's not uppermost in the minds of Scottish voters, in my outside, I'll accept, opinion. And we think it would be a wholly unnecessary distraction at this stage. If that referendum, as Salmond and others said, was a once-in-a-generation opportunity, well, maybe in decades to come it can be re-examined. But you know what? I doubt it.
Right now, there's Russian subs circling around Scotland right now. How on earth were you going to persuade the Scottish people it's a good time to break up the UK in the event of that threat? There is no appetite for a referendum. This is what people are fed up with. For 25 years, Hollywood's been dominated by this constitutional question and spend. It needs to change. And therefore, all I said was, can we just all agree amongst ourselves for, let's say, the next two parliaments, call that 10 years, pick a number. Can we just not talk about this? And can we please make Scotland the most prosperous and the most successful part of the UK?
Yeah, much else to worry about. Mark McLaughlin, The Sun.
Good morning. Given Scotland's strong historical and family ties to Denmark and the threats that you just mentioned, Mr. Offord, do you support Denmark's sovereignty over Greenland and its European allies as the guarantor of that sovereignty, with the ships going out there on exercises? Or do you think Donald Trump would be a better guarantor of that peace as the owner of Greenland?
Look, you know, Donald's a friend of mine. I think it's a great thing that he's done, getting rid of Maduro. I very much hope he comes to the aid of those protesting for their freedom in Iran. I really, really hope he does. Anything's better than this ghastly theocratic regime. But as far as Greenland's concerned, you know, waging wars on the enemies of the West is great. But what Donald Trump can't afford to do is to wage wars against his allies in the West. He's not going to invade Greenland. It isn't going to happen. It'll finish up with an economic partnership that'll be good for both sides. Of that, I'm entirely confident. And of course, the absolute question, you know, Denmark and Greenland must decide their future and decide their own sovereignty. No question in my mind about that. Let's move on. Tom Gordon, Scottish Daily Mail.
Hello, question for Lord Offord. You mentioned tax just now. Can you confirm that you pay the Scottish rates of income tax?
Yes.
And also, will you follow the example of many other party leaders in Scotland and publish your tax return before the election?
Don't know. I'll think about that.
Why not?
Well, because it's a private matter. It shouldn't necessarily be put out in the public domain. Certain things are private. What I can tell you, Tom, is that over all the years, from the very first job I had in Allsday Bakers in Greenock, I have paid every penny of tax. I've got nothing to hide. But the question is, do I want to put it out there? I don't know. Come back.
Well, as I say, other party leaders have done it on a regular basis.
That doesn't make it right.
It doesn't make it wrong.
Yeah.
So why won't you do it?
Well, I said to you, I haven't decided yet. It's a private matter.
I'm not publishing mine. I'm not publishing mine or my inside leg or many other private things. Right, moving on to Alistair Grant from The Scotsman.
Hi there, thanks very much. A question for Malcolm. You've obviously announced your wish to resign from the Lords. Do you plan to step back from your private directorships? For example, will your extensive shareholdings in Scotch whisky not potentially pose a conflict of interest? And just for Nigel as well, I think there's reporting from the Times that Kemi's team found a copy, or got hold of a copy of Robert Jenrick's speech, which was in a near final form, with the idea that he was going to resign, announce his defection to Reform within the next 24 hours. Do you recognise that?
No.
Did you know he was writing a speech?
I think he writes speeches all the time.
About this particular issue?
I don't. I do it off the cuff. He was not joining Reform in the next 24 hours. I'm 100% hand on heart, look you in the eye, tell you that is not the case.
On your question, just don't conflate. There has been a shareholder and a director. under the Code of Conduct and under the rules of Parliament, I resigned all my directorships when I went into Parliament in 2021 and haven't resumed those. I think there's one outstanding that will be dealt with. So there's no conflict there. In terms of being a shareholder in companies and SMEs, when I came back to Scotland, I was fascinated by the idea of small companies. It's where 900,000 to 1 million people in Scotland work in SMEs, small, medium-sized enterprises. And I had this thing about backing under philosophy of MISA. And MISA, M-I-S-S-A, means made in Scotland, sold abroad. And that's what we have to develop. Only 5% of our companies in Scotland export. We need to get up to 10% because exporting companies pay the highest wages and have the highest growth. So as an investor in those businesses, I feel there's a read across to politics. I feel that that's something that will help me in the journey to try and expand our economy.
The important thing, and look, the important thing with all these things, you know, because I've got private interests outside of what I do as an MP, the important thing with all these things is make sure you declare any potential conflict. And provided you do that, I'd have thought having people in politics who invest in SMEs is a very, very good thing, not a bad thing. And we should rethink how we approach some of these things. Simon Johnson, Daily Telegraph.
Thank you, Mr. Farage. You're a very persuasive man. Do you believe that, from your discussions with Mr. Jenrick, that he had been persuaded to defect to reform? And did you have an aspiration to unveil him before May's elections? And on Scotland, as you mentioned earlier, Sir Keir Starmer's here, polling this morning showing Reform and Labour neck and neck up here. Do you think Keir Starmer's presence in Scotland is helpful to you, given his unpopularity north of the border?
Enormously. We'll provide him with free travel, if you like. There'll be absolutely no problem at all.
And a quick question for Lord Offord, or Malcolm rather. You've resigned from the House of Lords, but according to the House of Lords Library, you can't actually give up a life peerage. So technically you still are Lord Offord, isn't that correct?
So I've tried to send it back in the post, but it came back, it returned to sender. Apparently the peerage is given by the monarch, and it's very presumptuous to think that the monarch will accept it back. But there is a way of doing it through an Act of Parliament, but that was last used in 1917. Yeah.
So it's a retirement. It's a retirement from the House of Lords. He can't go to the House of Lords. He can't sign on for the daily rate. He can't get the subsidised lunch, and he can't sleep on the benches in the afternoon. And he will not be using the title, even though, as he says, it would be impolite to send it back to King Charles.
And do you believe you persuaded Mr. Jenrick during the talks?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, like every deal in business, every deal in politics, it's never done until it's done, and the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed.
And did you have an aspiration to unveil him before the election, before May's elections?
Oh, if people want to come to us, they need to come before May the 7th. Because if they come after May the 7th, they themselves will probably look like damaged goods. And that's a message that goes out more broadly. Thank you very much indeed. Craig Patton, Press Association.
Thanks, Nigel. So you've got a Scottish leader, you've got your Scottish candidates. When are we going to see Scottish-specific policies from Reform? And just in terms of the parameters of the leadership as well, those policies, will they have to be run through you, and can you overrule them if you don't like them?
I am the leader of the party. I have quite a lot of power. I'm held to account by a board. I'm held to account by an elected board. If they think I've gone over the top, then they will tell me so and act. And if they wanted to, with the support of branches, they could remove me. But when it comes to the day-to-day operations of this still start-up party, I regard myself as a political entrepreneur. I regard myself as the chief executive officer of what is effectively a company that we're growing from a small to a medium to a big company. And yes, I have a very high degree of overall operational control and final decision-making. Yes, I do. But do I think that Malcolm's and the team are going to come up with stuff that I disagree with? No. Why? Because we've talked about most of this already. So I'm entirely confident that process will be smooth. I repeat what I said earlier, unveiling of the candidates, first week of March, policies, campaign stages, weeks to come, immediately thereafter. You will not have to wait long, I absolutely promise you.
You can overrule him if there's a dispute.
I am the party, I am the ultimate party leader, yes. 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 Maybe if some other parties had a bit more discipline within them, they wouldn't be being quite the mess they are. Sean O'Neill from the Courier.
Question for Nigel. John Swinney has said he will consider buffer zones outside of hotels that house migrants after protesters entered one in Perth. There's also been arrests at protests in Dundee recently. Are you concerned about the tone these protests are taking, its effect on residents within the hotels and also in the local communities? And do you think the possibility of buffer zones could be warranted?
You know, I'm concerned. I'm concerned that these people who come into Britain illegally are here anyway. None of them should be here. Not a single one of them should be here. And certainly when it comes to undocumented young males, none of them should be free to roam the streets. And you can see from Epping onwards, you know, there's just too many individual acts of behaviour that cause outrage and offence within the communities. And neither do I support opposition to this turning violent in any way at all. So if there has to be a buffer zone, there has to be a buffer zone. But frankly, I think we're asking the wrong question. This shouldn't be happening. And we know, of course, Glasgow now is the UK's capital for people that have come to Britain illegally. And I think it's something that voters are rightly very, very concerned about. Interestingly, this scores very highly with people who've legally come to Britain in the last 20 years, who say we went through the hoops, we did everything, we've paid everything, and yet we now see people walking in and jumping above us on everything. So I'm afraid it's an issue that won't go away. Smash the Gangs is a total failure. One in, one out, a complete farce. The problem will continue. Andrew Learmouth from the Herald.
Thanks, Nigel. In 2021, the SNP won 62 constituency seats on 48% of the vote. Poll today suggests that in 2026 they'll win 61 with 34% of the vote. That's because the opposition is fractured. So really a vote for reform is a vote to keep the SNP in government, isn't it? And if I may, you talked about the 100 candidates that you've been putting through their paces this weekend. Does that now mean it's too late for any more defectors to get a decent spot on the list or get a decent chance of
Well, Andrew, thank you for giving me the opportunity to put a free advert out right now to anybody that is sitting in Holyrood, in the Labour or Conservative parties, who thinks they might want to do better with us. If they want to get on these lists, they better get in touch, actually, within the next few days. So thank you for the opportunity to put that advert out. Look, we're a party on the up. I think, my view, if we get this campaign right, and if we push on in the polls, and if Labour voters and Conservative voters see that we are the only party in a two-horse race that can provide credible opposition to the SNP, then you might see a very big shift in numbers. I'm not going to sit here and 100% predict that, but that is what we're aiming to do. We're aiming to turn this into a two-horse race where people think voting Conservative or Labour is a wasted vote. And if that happens, then you might see a very, very interesting last few weeks of this campaign. Rebecca Brady, LBC.
Lord Offord, if you're in charge of the Holyrood election campaign, can you guarantee that there will be no racist ads against your opponents?
Reform's not a racist party. We're going to fight a very positive campaign on the issues that the people tell us is out of concern to them. There's no racism here, but we do need to deal with the issue. And that word should not be bandied about as a way of stopping people talking about real issues in their community. So we will run a positive campaign, I can assure you of that.
I think that it might be considered by many other parties that there was a racist advert against Anas Sarwar.
I remember when that came through, and there was points of view on both sides of that argument. I reassure you now we're running a positive campaign.
Olivia Thompson from Bauer Media.
Hi there. The SNP say this leadership appointment today is more proof that reform is just a bunch of Tories who Scotland's already rejected time and time again, pretending to be on the side of ordinary people. What are your thoughts on this and on comments that Tories are only switching to reform because of their own party's shortcomings? And if I may as well, polls have reform on par with Labour in a fight for second place in these upcoming elections. Would you both be willing to work with other parties to remove the SNP from government?
We are replacing the Conservative Party across the United Kingdom as the main voice of opposition to Labour. Therefore, it's not surprising that some Conservatives want to come and join us. And it's just as simple as that.
In terms of deals, you know how the Parliament is set up. It was set up by Donald Dewar and Tony Blair to have a permanent coalition in it. So it's quite a difficult Parliament to manage. We'll work that out when we get on the other side. But what is clear is that we've got a huge groundwell of support coming from Labour voters towards reform.
No question. Louise Wilson, Holyrood Magazine. No? Not here? No problem. We'll move on. Two more left. Severin from The Guardian.
Good morning, Mr Farage. Sorry, nearly good afternoon. You've placed a lot of emphasis in your press conference and your remarks today on the rigour and effectiveness of your vetting. Is that not an acceptance that in the past your vetting procedures have been very poor? You've got people like Nathan Gill that you've worked alongside in your party. Do you now acknowledge that your vetting in the past has been very weak and insufficient?
Yeah, piss poor. Piss poor. Sorry it's crude, but it's been piss poor in the past, and it won't be in the future. And nothing angers me more than all the work that I put in to this 7 days a week, being let down by people who haven't told us the truth, and we frankly haven't put enough effort in or professionalism in to find out the truth about them. So yes, I'm enormously angry that you know, many times over the years I've been thrown into political crises through no fault of my own. If it's my own fault, I can live with it. I can own it. But with things like this, it's not good enough. And I promise you that we are doing everything we can to make sure that these candidates for the Scottish Parliament are vetted and are fit and proper people to put before the electorate. Whether you agree with their views or not is a separate matter, but they're fit and proper people in every way. Last question before I run to give Robert Jenrick a call. Chris McCall of the Daily Record.
Hi, good morning. I just wanted to clarify a point you made earlier, Mr Farage, to David from the Express, when you said that in a decade to come, the issue of a referendum could be reconsidered. Now, in a decade, you know, all going well for your party, you might well be in power in Westminster, so can we take that as read, that independence and another referendum, it could be on the agenda for a reform government?
Look, I'm just saying to you, it's a once-in-a-generational decision. That was what we agreed, you know, both with the Brexit referendum and the separation referendum in Scotland. It was once in a generation. The odd thing is the SNP have not accepted either of those results and wish to overturn either of them. You know, whichever way we cut it, it's a very long way ambidistance. It's not something of immediacy. There are other very major threats faced by Scotland and, frankly, faced by the world at this moment in time. Thank you very much indeed, everybody.